My world that I want to have a little pride in. My world, and it's not a place I have to hide in. Life's not worth a damn till you can say I am what I am.
Thanks very much, Jed and Eddie, and well done on a fantastic inaugural Winter Pride. I think it's just been absolutely wonderful, and it's a huge honour for me to be here to host this inaugural Wilde talk, and I'm sure, given the success of the week, that it's going to be the first of many. Just a little bit about myself. I'm a recently elected councillor for South Dublin County Council, one of 3 LGBT plus councillors on a council of 40. And last week I supported a motion by my colleague Councillor Timmins to raise the trans flag for Trans Visibility Day in March. That's going to be flying over County Hall for a week in March. So headed in the right direction. Obviously, as the news this week shows, we have a lot of work still to do on behalf of our wider community, but certainly some good news there as well. I'm not going to keep you too long because I want to introduce to you some people who've travelled some distance and with some difficulty to be here. But as Jed already said, this is called a Wilde Talk because 119 years ago to the day, the great man himself died in Paris. But this month marked another anniversary as well, because November 20 years ago, the then Fianna Fáil-led government announced a new system for accommodating asylum seekers. I use the word accommodating quite loosely. And that system was called direct provision, and it came into force some months later in the spring of 2000. And so this talk, this symposium, which is just a chat with notions really, it is based around 2 seemingly very disparate events, but they actually have a lot of common threads running between them. Exile has already been mentioned, but also Wilde's imprisonment, having been persecuted on account of his sexuality, his imprisonment, and there's a direct parallel there. And again, without delaying too long, the last work that Wilde wrote, of course, was the epic poem, The Ballad of Reading Gaol. And unusually for him, it was drawn from personal experience, and it was based on his observation of a condemned man waiting to be hanged, watched by his fellow prisoners. And Seamus Heaney, when he was writing about The Ballad of Reading Gaol, remarked that it wasn't so much a political poem in the sense of a plea to stop capital punishment, so much as it was an indictment of an affront to the human spirit. And that phrase really struck me, because I think direct provision is an affront to the human spirit. And I think that Wilde, if he lived among us today, would certainly view it in those terms as well. Wilde was a master of paradox, and to some extent there exists a paradox at the heart of this new Ireland in which we live in, where we've made so much progress and taken so many strides forward over the last number of years. But the paradox, it seems to me, is direct provision. And so what I want to do is to call on 3 people who have direct experience of direct provision from an LGBT perspective. And so without hearing more from me, it's their experiences really that we want to hear about today. So I'm going to introduce you to Yevgeny Storn. Come on up, Yevgeny. Jabulo Nyandu. And Deron Mpofu. If we could just outline for people what it is that you're all coming from and what it is that you've come into in terms of the experience of LGBT plus people in direct prison. So maybe we start with Jabulo.
Yeah. Okay, let me just make a quick introduction to another introduction. Yeah. In a lot of senses, the paradox that you were mentioning is the paradox of how certain people in the LGBT spectrum getting the achievement of the struggle tend to, let's be honest, forget about others. And even though the struggle of LGBT people were relatively successful when we think about equal marriage or other achievements, we still can meet a lot of intersectional troubles and difficulties, especially when it comes to the intersection between race and sexuality. People of color are still forced to meet everyday racism, which is super subtle, which might be expressed from non-violent actions, so-called, that you cannot even demand to the police when you are ignored or when someone is not rude with you, but somehow pretend that you don't exist in the room or something, no? So all this together creates this sense of hostility that you are meeting on an everyday basis. And when you meet it outside a place where you are forced to live, sometimes for years, which is this notorious direct provision system, so you basically have no space of escape. You have no space of liberation, and you have no space of feeling relief. You have no this space. 24/7, you are in a hostility. Inside the center, and in a lot of senses, outside the center. We will touch, I think, the very important two things that are still invisible, and these two additional struggles that I, as a man, don't meet, because, you know, the intersection between race, gender, sexuality is what we would try to talk about today. And that's why I am very grateful to my friends Jabulo and Delroy, who agreed to raise these issues, to talk about it, because I was quite vocal and quite visible in the last 2 years since I applied for protection, but I think my perspective is also quite limiting, because it's a perspective of a cis man. So in this terms, I will pass the microphone to my friends. I will just also would try to tell it now, because I think we might be in a rush at some stage. Basically, I started what I started, and I was so compromised and committed to this because of Delroy. We met in Balseskin, which is a reception center in the outskirts of Dublin. And Delroy was sleeping. It was a huge task for me every day to knock his door and say, hey, wake up, Delroy. You need to go, you need to move, let's go there, let's go somewhere else. You know, it was very hard because he felt so abandoned, so invisible, so erased. And in this regard, I thought, okay, I have this energy, I can go, I'm not afraid. So I need to somehow do something, the very small what I can, no? And now that was the first kind of step. I used my experience of being an LGBT activist back in Russia. I tried to use this to create awareness about LGBT people in direct provision. And with this, I will also announce that once Delroy, who already has refugee status, got the travel documents, we will launch the fundraising campaign inspired by Noah Halpin, and we want the top surgery for Delroy. So please keep your eye on the Queer Diaspora page. We will need your cash to to make it happen, because unfortunately, after years told by lost in direct provision, Delroy cannot even make top surgery here because it will take another years and years. So we will make him go to Poland and to make a top surgery. And now I pass the microphone to maybe to Delroy actually, no, to kind of take the ball. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, really. I really appreciate that. Like, it means a lot for me, like the top surgery part. Well, everything means a lot to me, but the top surgery means like the world to me. I'll be free, and well, thank you. I really appreciate it. So, like he said, well, I met him while I was still in Basaskin, and it was a difficult moment for me, like coming from Zimbabwe, a country where you get persecuted for being yourself. So I came out when I was still in Zimbabwe, and it was difficult for me to leave just on a daily basis, just to do small things such as getting a job, from simple things as that, or going to college and being around people. It was difficult. I struggled with every single thing, like anything that you think maybe it's a simple thing that you can wake up and do. I couldn't wake up, I couldn't leave the house. I slept 24 hours a day until he came to me. He said, no, you need to go out, you need to do this. He pushed me in a way. I still struggled, but I would at least wake up and go and get food. I couldn't even go, like when you are in direct provision, you are provided with food at certain times. So if you miss that, you're not going to get anything else. So I would miss meals, like I could go for 3 days without eating, simply because I was scared. I wasn't comfortable to just go out and be around people. Everybody will be looking at me. Everybody will be talking about me. Everybody will say anything they want to say, because I still meet people who come from countries where there are no LGBT rights. They're there in direct provision, and it's their right to be there. There's nothing that can be done. And at the same time, they don't know, because that's what they've been taught, that it's illegal to be gay. That's what they've been taught. So I would go out there, everybody is talking about me. I'm a bit more visible than others, perhaps, maybe not, but everyone could just tell that, okay, this person is probably gay, so they think, even though I'm not gay. So, well, I'm transgender, so that's the difference maybe. So they would just assume I'm gay like everybody else, and then anything that is could be directed to anybody else will come to me. So I would just take it all and carry it. I'm one person who can't ignore anything people say, so I would just take everything and just carry it, all the words, the way they look at me, whatever they do, it would hurt me every day. When I think about it, when Evgeny was talking about it, I got a bit emotional, because it was one of the most painful times. You come into a country, you know nobody. You just left there. No one says anything to you. It's like they take you, they accept you, yes, but they throw you to the wolves again. So it's like you have to face these people every day of your life. You have to explain yourself, why you are transitioning, why am I transitioning, why I'm not she like they think I'm she. So every day I have to explain myself. I have to come out every day, even if it's to the same people. I have to still do it again, even after doing it. So it's like you have to go through all these things, and you have no support. No one is there. Even the people who are meant to protect you, you tell them, no, I'm struggling here. They're like, you can do this, keep going. But they don't understand. They don't ask you, what is it that you're going through? You're just there. It was a difficult time, but I managed through. Here I am now. I'm still not okay, perfectly okay, but at least I'm able to talk. I'm able to say it out loud, so that maybe there'll be a change, because a change is what we're all hoping for. We are not really accepted, I can say, in a way. people say we accept you, but we are not really. That's at least how we feel, because we are just left there, just thrown into the wolves. It's difficult for anybody. What if someone else is not as strong as me? What if they can't walk this journey? What if they're alone? What happens to them? They just come here, no one is there. So imagine if you are, any one of you is to leave Ireland today. Let's say they take you to Zimbabwe. You are just on your own. Not they take you, or you go to Zimbabwe simply because you are not safe here. You know nobody there. Everybody is different from you. Imagine the life you're going to live there. Wouldn't it be nice if you had other people supporting you? Maybe for some not, but for most of us, you being there for us means the world. Thank you.
And also, we were, how to make the situation sees less terrible than it was for us, make something even worse, no? So this is the strategy. And that's why in the last year, all the terrible things about direct provision, they are still here. But there is another big issue, which is emergency accommodation, which is basically, at least in Balseskin, we were able to meet each other. We were able to identify each other. We were able to find some support, grassroots or NGO or whatever. It was something happening around Balseskin because it was their place. It was their spot where everyone went first. Now we have these emergency accommodations, which is basically people completely left alone without anyone. They don't know where they are, what will happen tomorrow. And Jabula, unfortunately, went through this situation, and now she has been sent to a rural part of Ireland. But I'll give you the microphone because I think you will be able to provide a better information about all this.
Thank you, Evgeny. I know we are a bit pressed for time.
No, we are not.
I would like to start about where I come from so that maybe you will understand why I feel the way that I do right now. I'm an angry person, I'm very angry. So I'm going to be a bit emotional, maybe, I don't know, but I'm hoping I won't be. Okay, I come from South Africa. South Africa is regarded as a safe country. I mean, what with the poster boy, Mandela, and all that. I'm very angry. I'm going to be very sarcastic because I've been done wrong. I feel so. In South Africa, the LGBT community is recognized and accepted on book, but in practice, it is not. I went through a whole lot of things in South Africa, of which most of the things that happened I reported, and some I did not report, because even my family, they viewed those things as right, sort of like corrective rape and all that. I'm not going to get into detail with it. At some point, I was under the witness protection program. It didn't help, because here I am. So when I stepped off that plane at the airport, I thought I was free. I would be happy now to be the person that I am. I got to Balsaskin, the first thing that I asked for was if they could refer me to any LGBT groups, because I was very excited. It was something that I had never done back home. I was referred to a group that I still meet with once a month. That group is actually one group that is making things easier for me, that gives me something to look forward to. But then I was moved to Listonvarna. Before I was moved, I got the letter of dispersal 2 days before. I went on the internet to check Listonvarna, and I was met with reports that a couple of years back the town didn't want any asylum seekers and all that. So naturally I was a bit put off by that, but I went anyway to Lisdoonvarna. So when I got there, the first thing also that I asked is if there were any meetup groups for the LGBT people. There was nothing. There still isn't anything. I'm in a rural area with no support system. I was put in a room to share with a homophobic person. I wrote to RIA. They did not respond. It's only when it got out of hand, it was too serious now, that even the management at the hotel I'm staying at could see that they moved me to another room where I'm currently staying alone. So for me, I asked myself, is direct provision a breeding ground for depression? I'm quite surprised that there hasn't been people that have committed suicide. There have been many times when I've been suicidal. Even now, I just stay in my room, watch movies on my laptop. I don't have friends because people look at me as if I've got some kind of sickness. They do not want to be associated with me, the people I stay with at the hotel. And the majority of the people that I stay there with are people that come from African countries that do not accept or rather frown upon LGBT people. So I'm alone there, like a sheep, lost sheep, thrown amongst the wolves. I've written to people, relevant people, to be moved from there, but nothing has happened. I struggle for transport to come to Dublin, where like there's a lot of things, almost everything that I do in connection with my asylum process is done in Dublin, but I cannot. That 38.80 we get once a week is not enough, because for me to go from Lisdoonvarna to Ennis, if I want to make an appointment for 10 o'clock here in Dublin, I'll have to take a taxi. So you are required to pay the transport out of your own pocket, and then they will refund you. But at that time when they want me here, where am I getting that money from? Because the 38.80, I'm using it, I'm a woman. So I'm using it for my toiletries. So there's a lot of issues that I am facing in direct provision. And sometimes I have stopped now asking to go see the psychologist because I did not find help. It is of my opinion that somebody who has never been in a situation that I have been cannot help me. I was hoping that maybe someone out there can hear what I'm proposing, that the people, the asylum seekers, or the people that have gotten their papers could be trained so that they can be the ones that offer psychiatric help to the people that come in here looking for asylum. Because how can you help me if you've never been where I'm from? You are helping me according to what you read in the books, but you've never been in the situation that I've been. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I also would like to bring certain things that usually happens in the discussion, and because we are very short of time, I think it's very important to name them at least. One of them is especially for people who are coming from non-English speaking countries with, let's say, not common languages. one of the biggest issues that we met in our practice of activism and campaigning is that people are complaining that there is the translators might be a huge problem. The translators that can permit themselves the moral judgments about the sexuality of the applicants. And it was a case when a translator stopped translating the story of a LGBT applicant, turned to the LGBT applicant and said, "You're shame of my country, I want to translate it." And it was during the interview that basically means life for this person. So this is a very big issue. And I think the solution could be, again, like maybe provide English classes or English language classes, or encourage people to learn English, especially while they are waiting for the work permit, which we hope it will be cancelled, this 9 months waiting, which is no one understands why it's there, but it has to be obviously removed. And another big problem is the employment. Now most of people in asylum process after 9 months, they have right to apply for work permit and get it. And it's quite broad work permit. There are some limitations, but basically it's state employment that you cannot have, but all the rest you could. So I got an employment and I was able to move out of the REC provision even before my case was, before I was notified about the decision. So a lot of people would be able to also move out if we can, as a society, as a community, as LGBT sisterhood and brotherhood, think about it and think, aha, I heard about some employment, maybe I can. So feel free to contact us or Masi or Queer Diaspora. We will be happy to try to link and do something about it. I know other people who found work and they are now out of the centers. It's a huge relief when you can do it and when you can start live independently, emancipate from that absolutely terrible institutionalization, which is the REC provision. And the third issue there is the accommodation. Most of people, even if they have employment and income and whatever, or if they had status and they are trying to move out, HAP is a very big issue. The landlords don't want to accept people with HAP. Of course, the issues of LGBT asylum seekers, they are not sometimes very different from issues of any asylum seeker. And in this regards, I maybe call to you as the citizens of this country to just think that there are people right now here who might have status, who might be recognized by the state as an LGBT, or as an asylum seeker, sorry, but they cannot move out of DP sometimes for months and months and months because of the dysfunctional system of housing assistance payments. And yeah, Alan, I'll pass it to you now. Yeah, so this all is about us as a community who can just be a driver of a positive change. And I really call to LGBT community as a political actor of the positive change. We cannot help just to LGBT people, we need to help to everyone who needs help. This is my main message, and yeah, Alan, please, yeah.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Yevgeny. I want to take a couple of questions. Before I do that, just really following on from what Yevgeny's saying about being political actors. Obviously, we've got a number of by-elections that have happened around the country that are being counted as we speak, and in at least one of those, we have a mainstream political candidate making statements which are overtly racist, not misinformed or ill-advised, as the Taoiseach deigned to call them, overtly racist statements. And that's horrifying. We're not talking about an extreme fringe, we're not talking about Gemma Doherty, we're talking about the governing party, and that's a horrifying development, it seems to me. There is going to be a general election happening in the next 6 months. And so to all of you and to everyone in your circle, what I would say is, if you've been moved by this, as I'm sure you all have, please put this top of your agenda when they come knocking looking for your vote. There is a report out, the Oireachtas Committee on Justice has a report recommending the abolition of direct provision, not recommending a citizens' assembly, not recommending any further reports, the end of direct provision. So a question that you can all ask and those in your circles can ask, are you going to implement that report and you know, vote accordingly? So perhaps we'll take one or two questions. We don't have a roaming mic, I don't think so. If you could just shout them out nice and loud.
One, I'm really shocked at the way particularly LGBT people are treated in direct provision. And what brought my mind to was when Sylvia, I can't even take
Silva Tukula,
put into an all-male dormitory, a transgendered woman. Absolutely horrendous. And all that this community of LGBT plus has fought for in equality. The authorities of that should have known about that, not to do such thing, and once she was brought to the notice, should have been moved out there straight away. But instead they left her there, and I believe they're indirectly responsible for her death. And I'm ashamed of Ireland because of that, like, you know. And if you have to stay in direct provision, I think there should be a separate unit for LGBT people who can be together, and that can be a support for each other. And that's what I would hope to see in the meantime whilst awaiting.
Yeah.
Is there any signs that?
Just on that, actually, one of the recommendations of the Joint Oireachtas Committee is, it's not specifically in relation to LGBT people, but that is something to look at. There's a specific recommendation in the interim that victims of trafficking should be in gender-specific units and more training as well, which has been raised. That's obviously massively important. So yes, there is some movement, you know, along those lines, but obviously what we really want is for the whole thing to be drawn to a close, as the recommendation says. Any more questions? Oh yes, sorry, yeah.
Well, may her soul rest in peace. Well, when I first came to Ireland as a transgender man, I was housed with, I shared a room with 3 women, even though I was out and open as a transgender man. And it was a horrific experience. Like, I couldn't wake up first to go for meals at first. And like, I remember my first morning, I was supposed to wake up and go for the interviews. And here I am, I'm sleeping. And there are 2 women here. We shared a bathroom with other 3 women from the other side, so it's 6 of us. So how am I gonna wake up now? Because I can't sleep with my binder on, it's gonna wreck my back. So I had to wait for them. I was the last person to get into that bus. After showering, I had to wait for them to leave the room for me to change. What if they didn't want to leave? At some point, I had to go to the other side of the room just to try and change because someone else needed to use the bathroom. It's sick, like, sorry to use the word, but it's, yeah, it is inhuman. I know. So if someone, imagine if I had to live in that situation like Silva Tukula. She lived like that all her life while she was here. I stayed there for 3 days. I stayed like that for 3 days, and it killed me. What about her? It's so sad.
Anyone else got a yes? That gentleman there.
Just in the previous talk this afternoon, one of the things that came up was the leadership of the Pride movement in Ireland is still predominantly white, urban, usually middle class. And just listening to you as speakers, do you think that Pride and the Pride movement should work towards more ethnic diversity at the leadership levels so that we can fully, as you were saying, it can be hard even if we read the books to understand, and really to fully understand, we do need people more representative ethnically in Ireland to really bring home these issues within the Pride movement. Do you think that is a movement that should be taken?
If I may, yeah. I think yes, but there is 2 things that have to be considered, and they are very important. If it's done for tick the boxes, then my answer is no. And so it has to be a real dialogue and a real agency. And the second, which is very important, is yes, nothing about us without us. We are very tired of being represented by someone who have no moral right to represent us. You know, that's the answer. Maybe you can add something.
Yes, I think that would be the way to go about it. But also, I'm not looking at color here, because I think if a white South African went into direct provision, they will also put an LGBT member, they would also put her in the same room as, like me, they would also put them with straight people who are homophobic. So for now, it's an issue for the whole LGBT community that we all need to address it. It does not matter who addresses it, but yes, to be all inclusive would be good, but it's an issue that just affects all of us. Because I think, like Alan was saying earlier on about what is it, a legislature that's coming into effect, there should be vulnerability assessment when they disperse people to different centers to understand them. Because as Delroy was saying, for me it was hard, because now whenever she went into the bathroom I had to get out. And when I went into the bathroom, I had to make sure that I come out dressed, because now she could turn around and say, just because I'm lesbian, she could say I've been looking at her funny. So there's a lot of allegations that could come out of mismatched people put into the same rooms. So yes, it would be good to have maybe a center that mainly caters for LGBT community.
A temporary solution, so it's not rid of completely.
Just one more question before we finish up.
Where can we actually find the joint report, just specifically like, I don't know, bring the politics, like specifically say, this is what's being implemented, like your opinion on this, to our local politicians?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's actually just been reported by the Irish Times, it was either yesterday or Thursday. So I get it on the Irish Times online. So it's brand spanking new. The recommendation, I say, is abolition, but there's a list of proposals as an alternative or as an interim, very sensible and really incorporating much of what's been discussed. So yeah, I would say have a look at the Irish Times website, and it'll be published, no doubt, in due course. Okay, I'd like just to extend my warmest thanks. Yeah, sorry, do you want a last word?
Last words, maybe. No? I don't know.
Okay, like, we really appreciate each and every support that we get, but there are times whereby we get, for instance, journalists. They come to us not because they want to help us. It's no longer an issue of help, it's about, I want to make a name for myself. And at some point I was asked about, tell me, what was your name before you transitioned? What that has to do with my life in direct provision? So it's like, they want to know more about us. They want to write about me because you are going to read it, because you know Delroy, and they put their names up there. So it's now we no longer know who to trust. It's hard. Already we don't trust anybody, and people that come to us and say they want to help you, they take advantage of us. So even genuine people, when they come, now we no longer know. Even when people, you are coming to us, we're genuinely helping. We no longer know. So everyone who is genuine, please stand with us. We really appreciate any help, even if it's just to ask, how are you keeping up? It's not about money, no. I'm not going to come to you and say, please, may I have money, no. Sometimes,
no, we will do it.
Don't worry. All right, yeah, we'll do it. But, yeah. No, you put them in the corner. But like, what I'm trying to say is like, it's not always about that. Sometimes all I need is just to talk. We carry a lot. it's enough for me to come and say, Alan, look, I'm going through this. Alan, look, a GP makes me strip naked just to hear my chest. How does that make me feel? It's like inhuman for anybody just to take off your clothes in front of your doctor just because she wants to listen to your chest. Isn't that curiosity that they want to know what level is Daryl at? So like, it's like, please, can you stand with us through whatever? We appreciate anything, and we thank you for listening to us. It means a lot for each and every one of us. Thank you.
I'd like to say thank you to everyone in Ireland for welcoming us, to start with. I'm free, yeah. And one thing that I've been saying a lot these days is people have to understand where I come from. Hi, I'm Jabulo and I'm lesbian. I know it doesn't matter to other people, but yeah, I can say it freely. So that's the excitement that goes with it. But then again, in South Africa, the abuse was physical. But I'm slowly seeing here that the abuse is more mental. Only if we could turn that around. We need your support. We need to stand together. And thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I think the key words is solidarity, is support, is comprehensiveness. I don't know. Yeah, understanding, and yeah. Let's end direct provision, please.
My world that I want to have a little pride in. My world, and it's not a place I have to hide in. Life's not worth a damn till you can say I am.